We started last time to talk about the first few different ways that how food can become chametz. We started from the right side of my picture here, in the barley, and all the different ways that barley can become chametz. We're on page 4 now. That's what the woman says about it on page 4. So just to give us a drop chazar for what we need for today, is that barley, if you put it into water, it gives us this enzyme, which has this fancy name. It gives us this enzyme, and it can also make malt. That's not for today, but for our purposes, it takes this enzyme, and this enzyme breaks down starches and makes it into sugar. And that sugar also has a fancy name. It's called maltose. Okay, why it has that special name is not important to us, but it's called maltose that already catches our ear. It has something to do with malt that came from barley. Okay, but it could do that to any starch. Okay, it does that to any starch. It could do it to. If it does it to its own starch, okay, then it makes malt. Okay, that's what's called malt. But if it does it to any other starch, it means you take corn or rice or potatoes or wheat or anything, it makes this thing called maltose. Okay, that's what we were up to. That's what we were holding by last time. Okay, so what we're up to this time is if you allow that to happen to the right kind of if you do it to barley, and then you create this maltose and you put in yeast into it. Okay, yeast is the thing that makes bread rise, and it also is what makes wine and schnapps. Okay, it ferments. What the yeast does is, if you want to know the science of it, the yeast eats the sugar and turns it into two things. It turns it into alcohol and carbon dioxide. Okay, carbon dioxide is like what you breathe out, or like the bubbles in your soda. You'll see that coming in a second. Okay, it creates two things. It creates alcohol and carbon dioxide. So if you want to make beer, you put the malt eats the barley, and it turns it into alcohol. The sugar that used to be in that maltose turns into alcohol. And that's beer. Okay, that's what beer is. Beer is, you take barley, you also put something called hops that gives it a certain flavor to it, but you put in the barley, it turns it into this alcoholic beverage. Now it has alcohol in it. Okay, I didn't bring any beer with me, but that's because I found this outside. I'll get this in a second. Okay, that's what it does. Now, the yeast has there's a problem with yeast. The yeast can make the sugar into alcohol up to the era of 13, 14, 15%. When it comes to too much alcohol in the mixture, the yeast plots. The yeast can't do it anymore. So that's why if you buy wine could be 12% or 13%. It could be like those kind of numbers, but you never see wine that has more than, if you push it, you can get 15%, but you can never see wine that's more than that. Because that's what it does. They put yeast into the grapes, okay, so it eats the sugar from the grapes. That's what it does. It eats sugar and it makes alcohol. So now you have alcoholic grape juice, and that's called wine. But it can only go to that much, 12, 13%, you know what I mean? But that's as much as you could get. So how do you make something that should have a higher percent? Okay, this schnapps that I found outside, this is bourbon. Okay, this is 40% alcohol. So how could it be that it came to be 40% alcohol? How did that happen? The yeast didn't do it. The yeast couldn't make it into 40% alcohol. So what happened is the yeast made this into 12 or 14% alcohol. And then they did something called distillation. Okay, distillation is a very interesting process. Okay, it was discovered in the times of the Rishonim. Okay, the first truths about it is in the Rivash and the Rosh talk about it. They have truths about it. It's brought in Shulchan Aruch about it also. And that is, that wasn't a picture from this time. Okay, what it is like this. You take a pot, okay, and in it, I'm really an artist, you guys should know. You take a pot, and in it you put what's like wine. Okay, it's not really wine, but it's like wine. Okay, and it's sitting in this pot. And what you do is like this. When you boil water, you may know that water boils at 212 degrees. And when it hits 212 degrees, that begins to boil. When you boil alcohol, it boils at 173 degrees. Okay? You don't have to know the number, but there's a difference. There's 30 degrees difference between them, 40 degrees difference between them. So what happens is if you take this pot and you make it to, let's say, 180 degrees, okay, you boil up this pot of wine to 180 degrees, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is the alcohol is going to go out, and the water is going to stay behind. That's what's going to happen. Because the water is not boiling yet. It's not hot enough for the water to boil. But it's hot enough for the alcohol to boil. And then what's going to happen is this. So it would boil out. All the alcohol is going to boil out. What you do is you put a cover onto here. Okay. And you put a cover on like this. Okay. And what happens is all the alcohol that's boiling out goes through this little pipe over here. Right? The water stays behind, and the alcohol is going as air. I mean, it looks like vapor going through over here like this. And then at this end, at the end of the pipe over here, The end of the pipe over here, you put something here to cool down the pipe. You have something cold over here. Okay? You put something cold at this end. So the hot alcohol is going like this. It hits this coal, and what happens? It turns back into water, back into a liquid. And then it drips into here. Okay? It drips into this pot on this side. So over here, you start collecting alcohol. Because the alcohol is boiling out of here, turning back into liquid over here, and plopping to the bottom over here. This thing is called distillation. Okay, so what happens is you're turning this that used to be 12% alcohol, all of a sudden it's coming over here to 50, 60, 70% alcohol.
This is wine?
What you put over here, you put a wine into over here. Right. Let's say the simple way to do it, you put wine into over here, and over here you get wine that's much stronger. In English, we call
wine.
this.
It's wine? It has taste wine?
Yeah, it has, because taste transfers also. Not just alcohol, but taste goes over also. We would call this brandy. Okay, brandy means schnapps made out of wine. What happens if you make schnapps not out of wine? This wasn't made out of wine. This was made out of, when they made this, the so to speak wine that they started with, the mash that they started with, was made from, this is bourbon. The Derech Klal bourbon is 60% corn, 30% rye, and 10% barley. So they took all those things together. They took corn, rye, and barley together. They put the barley enzyme into it, and what did it do? It turned it into maltose, and it made something that's like a wine that 12, 13% of, it didn't taste very good. Okay, it doesn't taste very good at that point. It would be like a wine, but it's only 12% made of corn, rye, and barley. Okay, that doesn't taste so good. Then they put it through, they distill it, and then it gets to the point that it's as strong as if this is 40%. Okay, they really distill it more. They really distill it until it's like 60%. They keep it for a few years in the barrels, and then when they take it out of the barrel, then they water it down to be like this, like 40%. Why did it come? Why does it come stronger than 40%?
No.
Oh, because you're boiling out the alcohol and you're leaving behind the water. When you boil it out, well, so the alcohol's here, the water's behind. So this pot over here has, this is a lot of alcohol, and this is very little alcohol. This has a lot of water, this is very little water. So this is very strong.
96% of it?
96, you have to distill it a few times. Yeah, 96%. Yeah, that's okay. We're going to get to that actually. We'll talk about that stuff in a second. But okay, so usually when you make schnapps, it's not all from chametz grains, but derech klal, the grains have a lot of chametz in them. Like this is a sum of 40% chametz. Okay, that's the derech klal in a bourbon. It'll have a bourbon by law. It has to be at least half corn. That's if you want to call it bourbon. Okay, so it's usually about 60%, but the other 40% is probably chametz. Okay, so the grains that this is made out of is chametz. Plus, it had a minor of chametz also.
Can't make corn itself.
You could make corn. We're going to talk about in a second how you do that, when you would do that. But the people who make this stuff tell me it doesn't taste good. They don't make. You could make straight corn, but it's not going to come out tasting good. Okay, even if you did that, usually it has a minor of chametz anyhow. Remember, to break down the corn to make it, you have to put in the enzyme, and it'll have a minor of chametz also. Corn, it have its own enzyme. Enzyme it does, but it doesn't work as well. If people put in barley, that's the normal thing. You just put in the barley. There are other things to put in also. Okay? But if you know that there are people, what do people who want to eat schnapps eat on Pesach? What do they drink on Pesach? So they eat slivets, or they eat mead. People mead is not so popular anymore. They eat slivets. What's slivets? Why could they drink that on Pesach? The reason because slivets are made from plums. Okay? Plums they're full of sugar. They don't need an enzyme to break them down. They're not like a starch that has to be broken down. It's sugar. It's like wine. It has grapes. There's lots of sugar in it. So what you do is you break it down. You take the plums, you squeeze the plums and make plum juice, put in yeast, and it makes it into plum wine. We're going to get to how you get the yeast in a second. Yeast is at the very end. We're going to talk about how you got the yeast from. The yeast is not chametz. They put in yeast to make it plum wine. Plum wine doesn't taste so good either. Then you distill it, and you make it from plum wine into plum schnapps. And that tastes like what it tastes like. That's what it is. So that's why people would eat that on Pesach. And meat is made from honey.
You have to put yeast to get alcohol?
You have to put, yeast. The yeast is what eats the sugar and turns it into alcohol. That's what yeast does. It does it in your bread also. When you make bread, it also makes alcohol. When you walk past the bakery and it smells good, that's the yeast. That's the alcohol evaporating out of the bakery. When you walk past the bakery and it smells good.
You eat a lot of bread, you know, right?
What? No, when you make bread, when you bake it, the yeast escapes. So the alcohol escapes. There's no alcohol in bread, no. But that's what makes it taste good. That's what makes it smell good. When you walk past, you're smelling the alcohol burning out when they bake the bread. Okay. Anyhow, I hope I didn't lose you. But the short part you get from here is, when you make beer and whiskey, beer is always made from chametz, and whiskey is b'derech klal, the starch that was in that you started with was chametz also. Okay, b'derech klal it is, and almost always it has also a maimed of chametz. But the maimed is the smaller shail over here, because here's the thing itself. This thing is 40% chametz. Okay, so just for the havana of it, the Rishonim talked about maybe it should be mutter. Why should it be mutter? Because when it went from here to here in the distillation, it was just what they call zeib alma. It was just air. If you look at this pipe, you see nothing. You look in this pipe, it looks like an empty pipe. It looks like imagine if you just boil up water, you don't see anything. So maybe if it goes from here to here, and this, it looks like it's magic. But look like there's nothing in between. Ken Zayid, it doesn't have the same din. This might have been stam yayin or chametz, but maybe over here this is mutter. Okay, you're trying to say it's not true. It's not true. We don't pass them that. We pass them that it's not. They have rayas that it's not. There are Hoinim who want to say that maybe it is, but it's makubal that it's not, that it's also, and that even though it passed through for a second, it was, for a few seconds it was there, for a few seconds it was nothing, you couldn't see anything, but we say the din is that it has the din of chametz, and that it's considered chametz gomer. Hagam that went through this distillation. Okay? You can't get this without distilling. It's not shayach to do that without distillation, but Abu Pikin, it's makubal that thing is up.
People don't sell chametz gomer.
No, so some people do. Some people say we don't. There's two reasons why. Some people say we sell schnapps because there's a shiloh, maybe it's not chametz. There's such a shiloh. And the second thing is, the original reason why, not the original, the Tosefta brings, that the idea of mechirus chametz is from a Tosefta. Okay? And it's said there for a person who's stuck. For a person who's on a boat, and he realizes it's their Pesach, and he realizes he has chametz back in his house. What's he going to do? How can he do beer on his chametz when he's sitting on a boat and he's not near it? So it says you should do a mechirus to the guy and buy it back after Pesach. So, but derech klal, people did it only when they were stuck. Like in this case, a person on a boat. So schnapps was something that people got stuck with. It's worth a lot of money, and it's supposed to last for a long time. And especially if you're a moicher of schnapps, okay, it takes years. This bottle says that this bottle is 36 months old. It's 3 years old, because it takes a long time to make schnapps. So if I'm a person who makes schnapps, how am I supposed to do that? It's always going to have to go through Pesach. It's not shayach that I can make schnapps. Most schnapps have to sit through the whole Pesach. So that person who's taka shatz and chak, what were they supposed to do? So mechirus chametz for schnapps is very cool, because those kind of people, they were stuck with it. If I have a loaf of bread in my house, so I can eat it, or I can burn it before Pesach. It's not such a big deal. But to schnapps, first of all, it's worth more. But not only it's worth more, but if I run a business, it's not shy to do that. I can't not sell. That's why more people sell schnapps than other chametz.
If you consider it as a zeib alma.
Yeah, that's what the Rishonim talking about. That's what the Rivash is talking about. That's what Shulchan brings it. Letting in stam yayin, that maybe it's not stam yayin. If I make brandy out of stam yayin, maybe it's not stam yayin anymore, because it was zay in the middle. It was air in the middle. For a few seconds, it was nothing. It disappeared. I mean, if you didn't know what you were watching, you would see over here, you'd see a pot of wine, and then over there, you'd see all of a sudden, magically, there's liquid dripping into it that's new things coming into it. This pot's getting lower, that one's getting higher, and it looks like magic. I'm saying, if you don't know what's going on, there's no connection between them. So that was a shadow, and that's the Rivash's din. It's written that it's also. Okay, so that's how you make beer and whiskey, and that's why they're chametz. Okay, turn to the page.
Brandy always means sugar.
Yeah, brandy is made out of wine. That's what the shame brandy means. Schnapps made out of wine. That's what it means. Look, you should know, but there are the names of schnapps have to do with what they come from. Bourbon is called that because it's mostly corn. In order to be called bourbon, this is called Old Williamsburg bourbon whiskey. Okay, in America, by law, if you want to call something bourbon, it has to be at least 50% corn. There's nothing to do with it. That's just what the name is. That's what the name is. If you want to make rum is made from sugar, and and the other names are? The other parts here? You can make whatever you want to. But they're klal, they make it from rye and barley. Like 30% rye and 10% barley. And scotch is made only from barley. Only from barley. And beer is made from barley with hops flavoring to it. And each one, the name has to do with what it is. Okay, if you make each kind of whiskey, the name is connected to what you make it out of. That's what it's, you want to make tequila. It's made from sugar from a very specific kind of a plant. So each one has its own,
Rum is from sugar.
From sugar. Rum is from sugar. So rum does it. Yeah, from sugar. You take sugar like in your house and you have sugar. What?
Sugar sticks.
Yeah, rum is sugar. Like
Yeast inside them.
you have to put yeast. You have to put yeast, but you don't have to put an enzyme because it's already sugar. You don't have to make it into sugar. It already is sugar.
Right, rum is sugar.
No. It's not kosher Pesach. Well, it's closer to be kosher Pesach, but it's not kosher Pesach because the yeast would have to be kosher Pesach, and the kalim would have to be. This distillation that you could do for rum Tuesday, one people from the series is going to visit a place that wants hashgacha, that makes all kinds of schnapses, and they make rum also. So the same kalim are being used for both. But the ikar ingredients, you're right, the ikar ingredient is just sugar and yeast. That's what it's made out of. But so the yeast comes out as chum, but that's not such a tremendous shiloh. And the kalim ends up being more of a shiloh. But you wouldn't have to sell it. I'm saying if you think about if you have to sell it, no, the rum is not a,
What's the difference beer and scotch? How do they make it?
Oh, because beer is only 5% alcohol, that means they don't distill it. They turn it into alcohol, they leave it just at a small amount of alcohol, and that's what it is.
Scotch.
And scotch, they distill it to 40-50% to make it very strong. So beer is much less alcohol, very little, and it has to have hops in it. It gives a flavor. Certain the time of beer. No, beer is straight. No one distills beer. Beer is actually it's watered down. They make it like 9%, and they water it down to 5%. And that's okay. Let's go on page 5. Okay, we're going to try and finish. Okay, page 5. Okay, so when you make the beer and whiskey, there's two byproducts, two things that are toitzois of making beer and whiskey. Okay, the one on the right is called brewer's yeast. Okay, what's brewer's yeast? Brewer's yeast. I told you have to put yeast in to make the whiskey, to make the beer. When you finish making the beer, that yeast, I forgot if it floats to the top or it sinks to the bottom, and they scoop it off, and then they sell it to people. Okay, it has a tom to it, and they sell it to people. It's called brewer's yeast. It comes from brewing beer. That's where the name comes from. And people use it. And you find it in different kinds of places. One place I've seen it a few times is in potato chips. I don't know why. Some reason, for whatever reason. They use it for flavoring for that. People use it as a nutritional supplement. There are people who think it's healthy just to eat it straight. They think it itself has health reasons for it, whatever. And then it could be other things I have here. There could be a dipstick. It's used as something that gives flavor into food. It's called brewer's yeast. If you see it, you'll see it on a package. Just in the ingredients, you look at it, you'll see it says brewer's yeast. No, to me it doesn't have beer flavor. Maybe they think so, but no, it's not meant to do that. It has its own tom, whatever the tom is. Other yeast that you see on packages, those are not chametz. We're going to get to them at the very end. Where they come from. Brewer's yeast. Yeah, it comes from beer. It's after they make the beer, they scoop off the yeast that had been used, and now they dry it out and they put it in the food. Yeah, that's chametz. The other thing you can make from it, the other thing that comes as a toitzah of making beer and whiskey is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is the bubbles in soda and the bubbles in schnapps and well, schnapps doesn't have bubbles. The bubbles that are in champagne and things like that. And those bubbles, when the yeast eats the sugar, it makes two things. It makes alcohol and carbon dioxide. Okay? So let's say you're making beer. You keep both of those inside. The bubbles are inside of it, and you have the alcohol. It stays both inside of it. When you make wine, the bubbles go out. The carbon dioxide, they let it out. Unless you make something like a fancy one, like a champagne, they keep the bubbles in. Okay. But they also, all that carbon dioxide that's going out, they chop it, and they sell it to people who want to make soda. They want to make seltzer. Where people get, what?
So bubbles?
They sell it in a liquid form. They turn it, the air goes out, they chop that air, they turn it into a liquid. However they do that, they turn it into a liquid, and they sell it in a truck. It comes in a truck, and they turn that into your seltzer. Okay? So there's a shiloh, it's not for today. It's its own whole shit by itself. Whether those bubbles are really chametz. In other words, if they could very much come from schnapps. Very easily could come from schnapps or from beer. Well, not so much from beer, because beer companies keep the bubbles. But from a schnapps company, the shiloh is whether in din, is that also or not also? Is it, what? Is it maybe Zeh Ba'am or is it not? It's a whole shiloh. This shiloh is about 100 years old. That's a newer thing that they started chopping the bubbles and using it to make other foods. It's a big shiloh. And you should just, for your own curiosity, different hashgachos take different ways of looking at that. Some of them are makbid on it, and some of them are not makbid. Yeah. That the bubbles should come from chametz or not.
It's an expensive way of creating carbon dioxide, though.
There are other ways to do it. You could make it other ways also. But
regular seltzer wouldn't have it.
I'm not ready to say that. I'll tell you, you'll soon see where the regular seltzer gets its bubbles from usually. But some hashgachos are makbid and some of them are not. Okay, I don't think you have to be makbid. That's the truth. But if you think you have to be makbid, then you want to buy a seltzer that has the hashgachos being careful for it. Some people say it's kosher Pesach and they're not being makbid on it. They're not paying any attention. Right, kosher Pesach, and that the hashgacha should care. You have to be asking that hashgacha that they should care. It'll just say carbon dioxide. It just says bubbles. Basically, it just says it has in it. Doesn't have to say. Doesn't have to say where it comes from.
Did they just write COH?
CO2. It doesn't have to say where it comes from. So some hashgachas are going to be makbid and make sure it doesn't come from chametz, and some of them are not. What? So we'll have a whole separate share. Just not to know who does it. No, but to know what? I don't think you have to. I didn't say you're assuming that you have to be makbid on it. That's a child if you have to be makbid on it. Okay, maybe we'll do next. Then you have to find that. You have to call the hashgacha and say hello. If I'm buying soda from you, are you making sure that I don't get chametz to get carbon dioxide? Because some of them are not. Some of them say we don't care where it comes from. So anyway, okay. So okay, that's its own. Okay, weiter. The Coke in each place it's passed through with where it gets bottled at. The Coke that you buy here on the hashgacha is under CRC's hashgacha. So they're making sure that the carbon dioxide is kosher Pesach. So now you have to ask them, say, are you makbid that the carbon dioxide should not be chametz? That's what you have to ask them. It's not up to Coke, it's up to what the CRC tells them to. If you go to New York, the OU does the bottling there. So you have to say, OU, are you being makbid that the carbon dioxide is or is not from chametz? So it's totally on who's doing the bottling and who's giving hashgacha. Okay. Anyway, you shouldn't be so scared. I think that you don't need it. But there's a good reason to be makbid on it. Maybe we'll do it next week. What do you say? You have to eat hashgacha. You have to eat hashgacha and say to them. You buy hashgacha, you buy mayim chaim, you say to them also. Are you being makbid that it comes from... What? You have to ask them. You have to ask them. Or wait for the turntable. You have to ask them whether they're makbid or not. What do you want from me? What do you... it's not up to me, it's up to them. They give hashgacha. You ask them whether they want it, whether they're makbid or not. Okay. So, no, what I'm saying is, there's good reason not to be makbid. I'm telling you, I personally wouldn't be makbid. But there's good reason to be makbid. It's a whole shit by itself, just to understand why you should or shouldn't be makbid. Right, okay, so I'm saying there's reason to be makbid. But your Rav Machshir has to also be. If you want to be makbid, it doesn't help to look this. Okay, right there, page 6. Okay, page 6. I think they are. Okay, page 6. Okay, now, if you see on page 6, we push the barley to the side for now. Okay, we're now on the left side, just think about the sugar. And I'm going to give you, I should have done this last time. Okay, remember I told you last time that you have starch, tastes bland, and you put this enzyme into it, and all of a sudden it turns into sugar. Okay, it turns into sugar. If you put in one enzyme, it turns into maltose. Now we're going to see that if you put in different enzyme, whatever it is, it turns into regular sugar. Okay, it's called glucose. Okay, do you see what's going on here? Turns into glucose. Okay, glucose. It depends which enzyme. Okay, if you want to know the gory details, maltose is two sugars that are attached to each other. Two glucoses attached to each other, and glucose is just one. Depending which enzyme you put in depends on what the toicha is. But the idea is the same. Okay, if you put in something into the starch to break it down, you end up getting it into sugars. Okay, so this time I brought it to you should taste it if you want to. Okay. This is corn syrup. Okay, corn syrup. This is corn starch. Okay, if anybody wants to taste this, if you don't know what corn tastes like, this is corn starch. Okay, it tastes bland as anything. You taste it, I don't care, you'll try. But this is corn syrup. Does taste. Someone took corn, that looked like this, they put an enzyme into it. They didn't put barley enzyme, they put a different enzyme into it, and it comes out tasting like this. And this, whoever wants can taste it. I'm not giving you a taste of the schnapps. Then I'm not giving it. You have to say it if you want to have some schnapps. Okay, and this you'll taste. I have sugar here also if you want to taste that. What that's like. It tastes much like sugar. Okay, and this used to be corn. You know what I mean? A month ago, however long it's been sitting in my cabinet, a month ago, this was corn. Okay, so what happened? You could take. It tastes like sugar. Okay, that's when you buy soda, the sugar that's in it, they don't put sugar anymore, except for Pesach. Year round, they don't put sugar. They put in corn syrup. Okay, it's cheaper. So so what happens is, if you break down the starch, you can make it into sugar. Now, before we go on, for this, what I'm about to say is we get to the whole left side of the page we're going to do now, which is like this. When you break it down, you could use any starch you want to make this sugar. Okay? Everything we're going to see on this whole side of the page is going to be what you make out of this sugar, out of this glucose. But which starch do you start with? So in this side of the page, you start with whatever starch you want to. And the toitzah is exactly the same. The glucose comes out the same, whether you start with wheat, or corn, or rice, or sweet potatoes, you start whatever you want to.
That you make it a wheat, it's called wheat syrup?
It could be called wheat syrup, but it could just be called glucose also. Okay? And it tastes exactly the same. It doesn't taste any different. It tastes exactly the same. So how do you decide which one to use? And the answer is, you use whatever's cheaper. Okay? Whatever's benimtza, that's what you're going to use, and whatever's cheaper. So in America, we have loads of corn. Okay? There's an amazing amount of corn. So in America, b'derech klal, you use the wheat to make cookies. Okay? You don't use wheat to make syrups like this. You use corn to make these kind of syrups because that's cheap and it's easy to get to it. If you live in China, they use sweet potatoes. Why they use sweet potatoes? They don't like sweet potatoes. That's what they have. They have a lot of sweet potatoes. And in Japan, they have a lot of rice. If you go to Europe, they have a lot of wheat. If you go to Europe, their sugar and all the things we're about to hear about are going to be made out of chametz. Okay? They have a lot of them are made out of chametz. When in America, all the kind of things we're going to hear about now, b'derech klal, are not made out of chametz. Because they can make the same thing out of chametz or out of not chametz. So why should they waste their money? There's so much corn around. Corn is so cheap in America that if you have to make this, a sweetener like this, why would you use wheat? Everybody uses corn because it's cheap and it's easy to make it. Okay? So all the things we're going to... They can dine at the chametz. Now, in Europe, they might use sugar. They can use, but we're going to see a whole bunch of this. The bottom of the page is empty. I'm going to fill it all in soon. So all these things we're going to see about, those kind of things, if we're buying them, but they're not chametz. Okay, but in a European who buys it, they're going to be chametz. They have much more shver shilas than we do. Okay, all these things are going to really be minadin. They're really going to be mutter. We're going to assume they're kidneys. We wouldn't eat them. We're not going to try to eat them. But you want to know, should you keep it? Should you, what happens for a chayla? A lot of these things are going to be mutter because we know that they're made out of kidneys. By us, they're going to be made out of kidneys. If we lived in England, then we wouldn't say the same thing. In England, we'd be much more makbid because mistamet's not made out of kidneys. Mistamet's made out of chametz. Okay, so...
Celtic companies?
In what?
Ethyl.
I don't know, but they get a lot of stuff from Europe. So they have a more serious shiloh than we do. I don't know, in Ethyl itself, I don't think they're big into corn. No, not big into corn. I don't know.
Could be the regular corn from the enzyme from Barley.
Over here?
Yes.
Yeah, so I can't... If you use the enzyme from barley, you wouldn't get this thing. You get maltose, and they want glucose. Okay, so the science of it, maltose is two together.
So which enzyme they put in corn to...
You want to really? If you really want to know, it's called alpha amylase, and then they use a different one called glucose isomerase. There's all kinds of things. They make different what the names are. I don't even have to tell you the truth.
Where they get the enzyme?
You're going to find out on the last page. You're going to find out where they get it from. Okay, but they get the enzymes where they get it from, not from chametz. B'derech klal, not from chametz. I shouldn't say it never, but b'derech klal from chametz. They're going to get it from the left side of the page. All the things on this side of the page are going to be, in America, it's usually not going to be chametz. If you went to Europe and you got the same thing, they would probably have from chametz. Okay, so the first thing they could do from the glucose itself.
Is it also called corn syrup?
No, they wouldn't call it corn syrup. No. One of my kids had a candy, and it said on it was made in, I don't know, England or France, one of these places, and it said on it said wheat syrup. It's like I said that. But if it says it straight on it, so you understand, it says corn syrup. It's corn syrup. But the things we're going to hear about, the next thing I'm going to talk to you about is sorbitol. It doesn't say sorbitol from wheat syrup. It doesn't say that. It just says sorbitol. It doesn't say what it comes here. I mean, it's called corn syrup, so it's corn syrup. So their packages say Geffen wheat syrup. But for other things, all the other things, it's not going to say what it comes from. It's just, so that one, it was a candy, and it's under wheat syrup. That's unusual. Okay, so over here, the first thing is, if you take glucose, and you do something called hydrogenation, you don't need to know what that is. But it's the same thing. If you remember on the right side, we turn maltose into maltitol. I don't know if you remember that was on it's shaded out now. Good, so we take sugar into sorbitol. It's the same idea. Okay, it's not only that it sounds the same, it is the same. Okay? And sorbitol you'll find it in your toothpaste. Come out, every toothpaste has it, and it has it because it's a sugar, it tastes sweet, but it doesn't make your teeth decay. Okay, so if you put regular sugar, if you don't put sugar in your toothpaste, no one's going to want to brush their teeth. And if you put sugar into your tooth, you're wasting your time. You're putting sugar on your teeth if you brush it. It doesn't make no sense. So they put in sorbitol, which is, it tastes sweet, but it doesn't ruin your teeth. Okay, that's why, come out every toothpaste. You'll see. You'll look in your bathroom. You'll see you have it. What do you say?
Why don't they put it in the candy?
They do put in some candies. Some candies have that. They do. And use it to make, you see here also, you can use it to, sorbitol can become vitamin C, ascorbic acid, and that's what it could be. So when you have a vitamin C, we'll see more vitamins, I think, later, if we make it. that when you make those things, they can be made they're made from a starch. Even so, again, you look at it and say, that vitamin C. What shaykhs does vitamin C have to do with a loaf of bread? Like, how could it be that vitamin C could come from, what's the shaykhs? How could it be that it could be chametz? So, first, it's probably not chametz, but it could be chametz. Why? Because they turned the wheat into sugar, and then they turned the sugar into sorbitol, and then the sorbitol turned into ascorbic acid, which is vitamin C. Okay, so you have to know what you're doing, and oh my gosh, look what happened. How many steps I went through to get my vitamin C, but that's what it is. Okay, that's what. Anyhow, okay, right there. Page 7. Okay, if you take the sugar and you add yeast to it, what are you going to get? That's what we're doing here. You took sugar and you added yeast to it. So what happens when you put yeast into sugar? Okay, when you put yeast into sugar, you get alcohol. Okay, over here I'm calling that alcohol ethyl alcohol. Okay, that name, but ethyl alcohol and schnapps is the same thing. It's really the same thing. But you should know the word ethyl because ethyl alcohol is what's made out of sugar with yeast. But the other alcohols, methyl alcohol and butyl alcohol and isopropyl alcohol, have no shaykhs at all to food. Okay, they have nothing to do with being made from food. They're called alcohol for a scientific reason. It has to do with at the end of the molecule there's a carbon like this and an oxygen and a hydrogen like this. It has nothing to do with being made from food. So isopropyl alcohol that you used to put on if you cut yourself has no shaykhs to food. It never came from food. It came from gasoline. It has nothing to do with non-chametz. It comes from gasoline. It has nothing to do with anything. It's just called alcohol. The word alcohol has to do with the structure of the chemical molecule. It has nothing to do with anything. Okay, what? No, it doesn't make you sicker. No, it wouldn't make you sicker. Only ethyl alcohol will make you sicker. So ethyl alcohol, if you take sugar and you put yeast into it, you get ethyl alcohol. Okay?
Is it the only alcohol that's chametz?
Yeah, well, again, ethyl alcohol and beer and whiskey, which are also alcohol, is the same thing. The alcohol that's in schnapps is made from, it's called ethyl alcohol. I'm saying a scientist would call it ethyl alcohol. Okay? But those are usually made from chametz starches. In America, the ethyl alcohol is not made. It's made from corn. Okay, so when you make alcohol in America, do you ever see in the gas station it says may contain 10% ethanol? You can see that. Okay, that's this. Ethanol and ethyl alcohol is the same thing. That means is they took alcohol and put it in, and it comes from corn. That's where it comes from. Okay, they make it from corn.
Gasoline is chametz.
Well, it's chametz. Well, I'll say this: it can sign it has that much chametz into it, but it's in gasoline. No, it's in gasoline. It's not royal achila. Of course, it's not royal achila. It's in gasoline. You should go try to eat it. You know what I mean? So it's of course it's not usher, but it could be. Not if it's not royal achila. If it's not royal achila, it's mutar also. Yeah, chametz is nisum. That is mutar b'achila. It's mutar. It's. I don't want to say it's really it's mutar b'achila. If you eat it, it's actually. Okay, but you're not supposed to eat it. But it's mutar. No, it's mutar. It's not bali run. If you want to eat it, okay. Anyhow, so it's so for us.
So they make whiskey from the ethyl alcohol.
So the alcohol that's in this bottle, a scientist would call that ethyl alcohol. It's the same thing. But when I put it on the right side, it's because these things are usually made to taste good. When you want it to taste good, you put in chametz stick of grains into it to make it taste good. Because the corn alcohol doesn't taste good. But when you want to use it for all things we're going to talk about now, the things you want to use it for over here, they don't have to taste good. Okay, they don't have to taste good, so you use what's cheap. And what's cheap is corn. Okay, that's how they make it out of corn. So from here also, you see, you can get out of this carbon dioxide also. Okay? The same bubbles come out of there. And most plants, if you ever heard of people who make, what is it called? I don't know. Okay. If you have a plant that makes ethanol, usually attached to it is another company that captures their bubbles, their carbon dioxide, and sells it to people who want to make soda and things like that. So if you, the bubbles that are in your seltzer, most likely came from a company like this. Came from a company that was making kidneys. Okay, here in the United States, it came from someone who was making kidneys mustama. It could be came from chametz schnapps person, but it's also very likely that it came from a person making ethyl alcohol. Okay. Okay. What do they do with ethyl alcohol? So they use it in all kinds of different foods. They use it to make flavors. They use lots of things to make flavors. We'll see more of them soon. A flavor means if I pick up soda again. In that case, it's orange soda. Okay, so where did the orange flavor come from? So the derech challah has nothing. It never saw an orange. It has nothing to do with an orange. It's different chemicals that they mix in. Okay, so some of those chemicals include in them alcohol. Okay, it's part of making the ethyl. There's a chemical called ethyl butyrate. Okay, well, it doesn't make a difference what it is, but ethyl butyrate is made from ethyl alcohol and butyric acid. Okay, so the ethyl alcohol, that's this right here. And it comes out with some kind of a tom to it, okay? And it has a tom that's used in a flavor to make my soda taste like orange soda. And it should taste like whatever it's supposed to. Okay, it's used in lots of toiletries, like, cleaning things and mouthwash, v'cheina. Purell for washing hands. You'll see, if you look on it, it says it's 62% alcohol. That's what cleans your hands. It's like 62% alcohol.
What's the flavored seltzer?
The flavored seltzer?
Yeah.
So,
what makes the flavor?
What makes the flavor? They put some chemical into it that makes it taste like raspberry or whatever you want to. That flavor for sure needs hashgacha for Pesach. This is one of the reasons why. We'll see another one soon. Because all those chemicals could be made from anything. So, including they can be made from chametz. Like here.
It has no color, but it stays white. It
doesn't have a color. No, it doesn't have to have a color. It's put in a tiny amount. Not a tiny amount. So it doesn't affect the color. So Purell, Purell is another shaila, which we're not going to have time to. We can do it next week if you want to also. Another shaila, which is, you see over here, we have alcohol over here called ethyl alcohol, and we have whiskey. Okay? So the government had this Einfall. They said, we want to charge taxes to people, and the people, anyone who's doing something wrong, we could charge them extra taxes. Okay? In English, they call it a sin tax. Okay? If someone's doing an avera, we could charge them extra. Okay? So if you're buying cigarettes, you're doing something wrong, we could charge you extra taxes. Because nobody feels bad for those people. So if you start charging more taxes on buying eggs, everyone's going to complain, why are you charging us so much for eggs? But if you charge a lot of taxes on people buying schnapps, then not so many people complain, oh, so I let them pay extra for the schnapps. So on schnapps, the tax is be'erach 100%. Be'erach. Means if it costs $10, you have to pay another $10 of taxes divided. Okay? There's a tremendous tax. So what happens if I want to make Purell? Okay? I want to make Purell, so I need alcohol to make my Purell. So, but I don't want to pay the taxes because I'm not using it for a sin. I'm not doing that every when I'm using Purell. So the guy who buys Old Williamsburg, he should pay 100%. But I don't want to pay that taxes. So the government has a thing that you put something into it to make it taste no good or to be poisonous. And then they know you're not going to drink it. So if you want to make Purell, you have to put something into it that makes it taste awful. Okay, it has an English word called denatured. Okay, they denature the alcohol, and it tastes so awful. They know you're not going to drink it. Then you don't have to pay the taxes. If you want to make Old Williamsburg, you're not going to put that into it, because else you won't be able to drink it. So then you pay taxes. That's also a shayla, whether it stays usher after you made it taste so awful. Okay. Let me go on. I'm going to try to finish. Okay. 2 more pages.
What is decaf coffee?
Decaf coffee. Okay, I'll tell you. Decaf coffee. In order to get the caffeine out of the coffee, how do they get it out? It doesn't grow like that. They get it out, they pour something over the coffee bean that causes the caffeine to leave. One of the things that they could use, that they could pour over it, is called ethyl acetate. Okay, ethyl acetate, the ethyl part of it comes from ethyl alcohol. So if it was made from chametz, if the ethyl acetate was chametz, if the ethyl acetate was chametz, what they poured over the coffee bean to get out the caffeine, then there's a chashash that maybe the beans still have a tam of that ethyl acetate. It is butter. It's in tiny amounts. But the ethyl acetate, okay, I'll tell you, it has a very special thing. Ethyl acetate, if you eat a regular amount of it, it's poisonous. Okay, if you eat a certain amount of it, it's dangerous. But if you eat tiny amounts, it's healthy and it's nice and tam l'shvach. It gives a good tam. So the chashash is, there's so little left of it on the coffee bean. They can't leave a lot of it because it would be poisonous. But maybe there's so little that's just right that it's nice and tam and not poisonous. That's the chashash. Maybe it's not mustaver that it is, but that's the possibility. That's why you're not supposed to use decaf coffee on Pesach without hashgacha. Okay. I'm trying to finish. Page 8. Okay. If you take ethyl alcohol and you do another thing to it, you ferment it again. Okay, you put in another enzyme into it. Okay, it has another name. You guys like the names. It's called acetobacter. Okay, another name. Okay, it turns the alcohol into vinegar. Okay, that's what it does. You put in alcohol, and you come back tomorrow, and you have vinegar. Okay, and that vinegar is used in all kinds of what we call condiments, ketchup and mustard and pickles, v'cheina. So the din of that ketchup for Pesach is totally on where they got the vinegar from. The vinegar, there's such a thing as called malt vinegar. Malt vinegar means the alcohol came from mamish from malt. That's pure chametz. But the derech klal, the pickles we have don't come from that. The pickles we have come from kidneys. The alcohol came from kidneys. So the vinegar came from alcohol. The alcohol came from sugar. The sugar came from starch. So you have to know what was the starch that it came from to know whether it would be chametz or not. Okay? So that's we wouldn't eat pickles without hashgacha for Pesach. Because Ken Zayin, that the vinegar came from an alcohol. Well, it could have been kidneys. We wouldn't eat that either. But even forget about the kidneys, Ken Zayin came from chametz. So we wouldn't eat it. But the truth is that the roiv is that it's not from chametz. The roiv is that it's from kidneys. Okay, so the person has to try, could they keep it or could they not keep it? Yeah, of course they can keep it. Because it's not chametz. Like, it's not chametz. You wouldn't eat it. No, you don't have to. What? But from kidneys, you're allowed to keep it on Pesach. There's no ba'yi raw. And you can't eat it. No, I'm not saying you should eat it. I'm saying, but minadin really is not chametz. Minadin, the roiv is that it's not from chametz. There is kosher Pesach vinegar because you can make it from a different starch. Again, the vinegar comes from alcohol, that comes from sugar, that comes from starch. If the starch was potatoes, if you started with potatoes, you started with sweet potato, you started something like that, then you're okay. It depends what you start with. Okay, this people use from tapioca. You know what I'm saying? Whatever you start, if you start with the starch that's potato. No, it just says alcohol. It just says vinegar. Now you know vinegar comes from alcohol, but where the alcohol came from, who knows? You know. So okay, and the last is, and this. You're only going to hear half the story, but the last is that the sugar that they have could also be used. They could ferment the sugar. What does that mean? They ferment it. Okay. It's a fancy word. It means is you take some microorganism, some little thing that you can't see, okay, some small thing. You throw it into a bath of sugar, okay, a big container full of sugar. You pour it. You take a little thing like this. You pour it in like that. Okay, you pour it in, and then what happens is that living thing that you poured in, it doesn't look like it looks just like water, but the thing that you poured in eats the sugar, and either it makes more of itself, or it makes something else that you want. Okay? Just like, remember I told you, yeast. If yeast eats sugar, it makes alcohol. So there are other ones that eat sugar and make other things. Okay? And scientists have found a million things to do. All kinds of little microorganisms that when you feed them sugar, they make all kinds of other things. Whatever you want. But there are all kinds of things that they can make. Okay, so there's a list here of different things that they can make. They can make all kinds of things from. So, for example, when you make cheese, the way milk turns into cheese, you put in something called rennet. Okay, so real rennet comes from an animal stomach. How do they make rennet that's not from an animal stomach? They take a microorganism, feed him sugar, and look at that. Come back tomorrow, you have a whole container instead of full of sugar. All of a sudden, it's full of rennet. So if I make cheese. And the rennet had come from sugar that had been chametzlik. Then the cheese that I had has a maimed that was chametzlik. Okay, they took a vat. If that was sugar that came from chametz, then this whole container is chametz. Into it I poured something, and then tomorrow it turned into rennet. Magic. It turned into rennet, and now I put it into my milk to make my cheese. So I was miming my milk with chametz. Or I was miming with kidneys, or I was miming it with nothing, with something that's completely not a shayla at all. Okay, so all these things, they could all come from it. And on that list is the yeast. Okay, the yeast that we have in our house, see at the bottom of this is yeast, comes like that. They put in the microorganism, like I actually think I saw this in a company, they put in the microorganism, and you come back a few hours later, and instead of being, they feed it just sugar, so instead of having sugar, all of a sudden the container is full of yeast. Okay? So the yeast that you have in your house, and that they use for a lot of these things, are like, usually kidneys, yeah, usually, because that's what they would feed it. Why would they give it chametz if they could give it kidneys? And for us in America, we would give it kidneys. Okay, so what? So you should know. So when you think about it, I'll say this one. We're not over time here, but when you want to know if a food is chametz, a bunch of people ask, would it say on the package if it's made from, what the source is? So if you want, let's say I pick up a medicine and I want to know, is this medicine chametzik or not chametzik? And I see on it that it says citric acid, and that's pretty common. Citric acid is one of these things that's made by fermentation. So I take to the company, I say, could you tell me, is the citric acid chametz? So the person will look at me, and he's going to laugh at me. He's going to say, citric acid chametz? Of course not. I put sugar into the container, I put in a little, a vial of something in, and then tomorrow it came back, of course it wasn't chametz. But really that's not the question. The question is, the glucose that you have in your container, what starch did that come from? He has no idea. He himself doesn't even know where it came from. He bought it from somebody. He doesn't know. He bought glucose from somebody. So you have to say, you bought your sugar from somebody. Let's go to that person and say to him, tell me, when you made that sugar, what was the starch that you used to make that sugar? So that person is the one we have to talk to, not the person who's making the medicine. He doesn't know from. He doesn't know from what he made the sugar. He just made it from sugar. He doesn't know what, So, yeah, and there's more. There's maybe 5 or 6 that are listed here, but there's many, many more things that they make from those enzymes. From fermentations. Okay? And if you look on this page, that's the scary page. That's all the things together. Nothing shady there. But by now, of course, it shouldn't be scary to you anymore. Because now you already heard me go on for so long. By now, most of you understand it all.